Imagine finally getting the keys to your dream home after months of waiting, excitement bubbling as you start moving in. Now imagine that same excitement turning into pure frustration and disbelief because your neighbor, the classic HOA Karen, calls the cops on you, thinking you're stealing from your own house. Sounds unbelievable, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. I had just begun unloading boxes and furniture from my moving truck when suddenly I noticed a commotion across the street. A woman from the neighborhood, someone I'd never met before, was on the phone, clearly upset. Before I even had a chance to ask what was wrong, a police car pulled up right in front of my house. I was stunned. What could possibly have gone wrong? This wasn't just any neighbor. This was the kind of person who took HOA rules way too seriously and seemed determined to make life difficult for anyone who didn't fit her idea of perfect. And now she was convinced I was some kind of thief, moving stuff out of a house that she didn't even realize I owned. The situation quickly spiraled, with officers asking questions I couldn't believe I had to answer just to prove I belonged there. In the middle of what should have been one of the happiest days of my life, I found myself feeling helpless and angry, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake moving into this neighborhood. Was this just the start of constant battles with HOA rules and neighborhood drama? Or was there a way to clear up the misunderstanding and finally settle in peacefully? Stick around, because the story only gets more intense from here. You won't believe how this all unfolded, and what happened when I confronted the HOA Karen face to face. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So, here's a little backstory on how things got to this point. I've been searching for the perfect house for months, trying to find somewhere peaceful with a friendly neighborhood. When I finally found this place, it felt like a fresh start, a place where I could build new memories without the usual drama. The community seemed nice enough at first, and the HOA rules didn't seem too strict. But as I moved in, I quickly realized there was one neighbor who took those rules way more seriously than anyone else. She was the kind of person who monitored every little thing, from how people parked to how late visitors stayed. I heard from a few neighbors that she had called the HOA or even the cops before, but I thought, that's just small-town quirks. I never expected it to happen to me on day one. When the police showed up, I tried to stay calm. I explained that I owned the house, showed my ID, and tried to answer their questions as clearly as I could. But the woman, let's call her Karen, wasn't convinced. She stood there, arms crossed, with this look like she was ready to escalate things. It felt like she didn't want to hear my side at all. She kept insisting that she saw someone suspicious moving stuff out, even though it was clearly me bringing things in. The whole scene was surreal. People walking by were stopping to watch, and I felt like I was on trial in my own front yard. What made it worse was the tension this brought into the neighborhood. Some neighbors seemed to side with Karen, whispering about how strange it was that the new person was already causing trouble. Others looked at me with sympathy, but nobody wanted to get involved. The HOA board was suddenly in the background, with emails flying back and forth, and I wasn't sure what they were saying behind my back. I felt trapped, like I was being pushed out before I'd even settled in. And the strangest part, Karen didn't even know half the story. She had jumped to conclusions, assuming the worst without asking a single question. But why? Was this about the rules, or was there something more personal behind her actions? I knew I needed to figure that out, but first, I had to survive day one without losing my cool or my new home. After that first shocking encounter, things didn't just settle down like I hoped. If anything, the tension in the neighborhood seemed to thicken. I started hearing stories from other neighbors about Karen, how she was always quick to call out anyone who didn't follow every tiny HOA rule, how she acted like she was the unofficial neighborhood watch. Some people found her annoying but harmless. Others said she could be downright intimidating. I never thought I'd be caught in the middle of it, especially on my very first day moving in. What made it worse was how Karen's behavior seemed to divide the neighborhood. A few neighbors, mostly longtime residents, supported her strict enforcement of the rules. They said things like, "We need to keep this community safe and clean," And if everyone just followed the rules, there wouldn't be problems. But there were others who quietly resented her. They talked about how she made the neighborhood feel like a prison, how I also started noticing little things, subtle looks when I walked outside, neighbors whispering nearby when Karen was around. It felt like the entire community had split into two groups, and I was stuck right in the middle, just trying to live my life without drama. Meanwhile, the HOA board was getting involved, sending emails about neighborhood concerns and maintaining community standards. I couldn't help but wonder if Karen had contacted them behind the scenes, pushing for action against me. Then there was the police visit itself. Even after I proved I owned the house, I could tell the officers were skeptical, probably because of Karen's complaints. It made me think about how easy it might be for someone to get wrongly accused just because of one person's assumptions. What if this wasn't just a one-time thing? What if Karen kept calling the cops anytime she didn't like what she saw? The thought was exhausting and honestly a little scary. There was so much more beneath the surface, and I was starting to feel like this neighborhood wasn't the peaceful new beginning I hoped for. The real question was, how far would Karen go to make her point, and how would I fight back without making things worse? The answer wasn't clear yet, but I knew I was about to find out. Days passed, but the tension never eased up. Every time I stepped outside, I felt like Karen's eyes were on me, watching my every move. It wasn't just paranoia. Neighbors started whispering more openly, and I caught myself wondering if they were talking about me behind my back. The peaceful start I'd imagined was slipping further and further away. Then came the notices from the HOA. At first, they were just harmless reminders about community guidelines, nothing major. But soon they turned into official-looking letters warning me about unapproved activities and complaints from residents. I knew exactly who those complaints were from. Karen had launched a campaign, it seemed, making it her mission to make me feel unwelcome. I tried reaching out to the HOA board, hoping to explain my side, but their responses were cold and vague, almost like they didn't want to get involved, or maybe were waiting to see how the drama would unfold. The police visit still haunted me. I kept replaying it in my mind, how quickly everything had escalated, how easily my ownership and right to be there had been questioned. What if someone else had believed Karen without checking? I started worrying about safety, about how my own home could feel like a battleground. I even considered installing cameras, not just to protect my property, but to have evidence if anything else happened. One afternoon, as I was carrying in a box, I noticed Karen standing at the edge of her yard, staring right at me with that familiar cold glare. This time, she didn't look like she was just watching. She looked ready to confront me. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Was she about to say something? Or worse, call the cops again? Around me, neighbors were starting to take sides openly, and the community I'd hoped to join was turning into a powder keg. I knew a confrontation was inevitable. The question was when, and how explosive it would be. Would Karen finally let me live in peace, or was this just the beginning of a full-on neighborhood war? As I braced myself for what was coming, I realized this story was far from over, and the next moments would decide everything. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more stressful, something happened that completely flipped the situation upside down. A few days after that tense moment with Karen glaring from her yard, I found an unexpected letter slipped under my front door. It wasn't from the HOA, the police, or even Karen herself. It was from someone else in the neighborhood, someone I barely knew. The note was polite but urgent, warning me that Karen's accusations were only part of a bigger, more complicated story. Apparently, Karen had been involved in some serious disputes with other neighbors long before I even moved in. Some people hinted that her behavior wasn't just about following HOA rules, it was personal. There were rumors about past conflicts, and some even suggested she had a hidden agenda, maybe trying to push people out or control the community in ways nobody expected. This revelation hit me hard. Suddenly, the tension wasn't just about a strict neighbor enforcing rules. It felt like I was caught in the middle of a long-standing neighborhood drama, and I was the latest target. I started to wonder, Was Karen trying to make an example out of me? Was this about me moving in, or was it about her maintaining some kind of power? On top of that, I noticed some subtle but strange things happening around my property. Packages I'd been expecting went missing, and one day I found my mailbox slightly damaged. Nothing was proof enough to accuse anyone, but the timing felt suspicious, especially. Some were scared to speak up. Others avoided me like the drama would rub off. It felt like a silent war playing out behind the manicured lawns and white picket fences. With everything escalating, the HOA pressure, Karen's relentless watch, and now these mysterious incidents, I started to question if I could really settle in here at all. What I thought was just a neighborly misunderstanding was turning into something much bigger. The stakes were higher than I ever imagined, and I still had no idea how far this would go or what the fallout would be. And just when I thought I had a grip on what was happening, something else was about to shake everything to its core. The tension finally reached a breaking point one afternoon when I decided I couldn't wait any longer to confront Karen directly. I wanted answers. Why was she so obsessed with me moving in? Why had she gone as far as calling the cops, spreading rumors, and stirring up the neighborhood? I knocked on her door, heart pounding, ready for whatever confrontation awaited. Karen answered with that familiar stern look, but this time, something was different. As I calmly explained how her actions had affected me, her expression softened slightly, but then she dropped a bombshell. She admitted she wasn't just worried about the rules or the HOA. Her family had lived in the neighborhood for decades, and she believed the community was changing too fast. To her, I was a symbol of that change, someone new disrupting the order she wanted to keep. She feared losing control and the neighborhood she'd known all her life. It wasn't just about boxes and moving trucks, it was about feeling powerless. Just when I thought we might reach some understanding, another twist hit. A neighbor I'd barely spoken to stepped forward with a stack of letters and emails Karen had sent to the HOA and even the police over the years. Some were exaggerated complaints. Others were downright false accusations against several residents. The community had been under her grip far longer than I realized, and her actions weren't isolated. She had a history of stirring up trouble to get her way. But here's the surprising part. After everything came to light, the HOA board finally stepped in. They warned Karen about her behavior, clarifying that the neighborhood was for everyone, not just her. And more than that, they apologized to me for the slow response. Slowly, the community started shifting. Some neighbors reached out, offering support and welcoming me in genuinely. Yet, even as peace began to settle, I found one last note taped to my door late at night, unsigned with a simple message, "This isn't over." It was a reminder that in this neighborhood, beneath the quiet streets and friendly faces, the drama wasn't quite finished. And honestly, I'm not sure it ever will be. After that final note, I realized living in this neighborhood meant more than just owning a house. It meant being part of a community with its own history, its unspoken rules, and sometimes its conflicts. But I also learned that standing your ground and seeking the truth could change things for the better. The HOA's involvement showed me that even when problems seem rooted deep, there's hope for fairness and understanding. Karen's story reminded me how fear and control can push people to act in ways that hurt others, even if they think they're protecting something valuable. It wasn't easy forgiving her or the way she had tried to push me out, but I understood where she was coming from, and that made it easier to move forward without holding on to anger. The neighbors who reached out afterward showed me the importance of connection and kindness, even in places where tension once ruled. Living here now feels different. The strange incidents stopped, the gossip faded, and I'm finally settling into the home I worked so hard to get. It's not perfect, no neighborhood is, but it feels like mine. I'm learning to navigate the HOA rules on my terms, and I'm building new friendships that remind me this community can be a place of support, not just conflict. Looking back, the whole experience taught me how important it is to be patient and to stand up for yourself calmly. It also showed me how quickly misunderstandings can spiral, especially when assumptions take over before people talk to each other. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's that everyone deserves a fair chance, especially when it comes to their own home. Thanks for sticking with me through this crazy journey. If you've ever dealt with HOA drama or tough neighbors, share your story below. I'd love to hear how you handled it. And remember, sometimes the hardest challenges can lead to the strongest communities.